Kiana sat quietly by the window, watching as the city outside buzzed with life. The streets were filled with cars, people, and the constant hum of activity that seemed so far removed from her own world. Inside, her room was a small, dimly lit space with walls that had seen better days. There was a worn-out mattress on the floor, a few clothes scattered around, and a small desk where Kiana spent most of her time. The silence in the room felt heavy, like it had been there for years, making her thoughts even louder than usual. At just 16, Kiana felt like she had been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders for as long as she could remember. She had grown up in a tough neighborhood, one where every day seemed like a struggle. She had learned early on that if you weren't careful, you could easily lose yourself in the chaos. Her mother had always worked hard to make ends meet, but there were days when even that wasn't enough. Kiana had become used to not asking for help, to not showing weakness because that was how things worked around here. Still, deep down, she yearned for something more. She wanted to escape, to break free from the confines of her small room and the harsh realities of the world she lived in. She had big dreams even though they seemed so far out of reach. Kiana often found herself daydreaming about a different life, a life filled with hope and possibility. She would imagine traveling to new places, meeting people who cared, and living a life where she didn't have to constantly fight just to survive. But no matter how hard she tried to push those dreams away, they always seemed to come back. It was hard not to feel defeated when everything around her seemed to be telling her that people like her didn't get to have those dreams. The world was a tough place, and it had no problem showing you just how small you really were. One evening, as Kiana scrolled through her phone, she came across a video that caught her attention. It was an old clip of a speech given by one of her idols, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. She had always admired him, not just for his success, but for the way he seemed to genuinely care about others. In the video, The Rock was talking about his own struggles growing up, how he had faced rejection and failure but had never given up. He spoke about the importance of believing in yourself, even when it felt like the world was against you. Kiana had watched the video several times. Something about his words struck a chord with her. It was like he was speaking directly to her, as if he understood what it felt like to be invisible, to be stuck in a place where you didn't belong. For the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought. The Rock's words lingered in her mind as she lay in bed that night. She kept thinking about how he had turned his struggles into fuel for his success. If he could do it, maybe she could too. But then doubt crept in. Who was she kidding? She didn't have the same opportunities. She didn't have the same support. The people around her barely noticed her existence, let alone offered a hand to help her get out. That night, as she tossed and turned in bed, the idea began to form in her mind. What if she could somehow reach out? What if she could send a message to The Rock himself, to someone who might understand her pain? She didn't know if it would work, but the thought of just trying made her heart race. What did she have to lose? Kiana grabbed her phone and typed out a message. She wasn't sure what she was doing, but she felt like she had to try. She wrote about how hard things had been for her, about the struggles she faced every day, and how she admired him for always staying positive, even in the toughest times. She asked if he had any advice or even just a word of encouragement. It was a simple message, but it came from the heart. Before she could second-guess herself, Kiana pressed send. She stared at the screen for a moment, her heart pounding. She had no idea if The Rock would ever see it, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had done something. She had taken a step, however small, toward changing her life. The next day, Kiana couldn't stop thinking about the message. She went about her day, trying to push the thought out of her mind, but it kept creeping back in. She felt ridiculous, like she had done something foolish. What was the likelihood that someone like The Rock would even see her message? And if he did, what could he possibly do to help someone like her? As the days passed, Kiana tried to go about her life. She focused on school, hanging out with a few friends and doing her best to keep her head down. But something felt different. The idea that she could reach out, that maybe there was someone out there who cared, started to make her feel a little less invisible. A week later, Kiana received a notification on her phone. She almost ignored it, thinking it was just another random comment on one of her social media posts. But when she checked it, her heart stopped. It was a message from The Rock. At first, she thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone else had written the message for him. Or maybe it was some kind of automated response. But as she read the words, it became clear that this was real. The Rock had seen her post and he had taken the time to respond. His message was simple, but it was everything Kiana needed to hear. He told her that she was not alone, that she had the strength within her to overcome anything life threw her way. He told her to keep fighting, to believe in herself and to never give up, no matter how hard it seemed. Kiana could barely believe it. The words were kind, reassuring, and filled with hope. She had never expected anything like this. It wasn't just a message, it felt like a lifeline. For the first time in a long while, she felt like someone truly understood her. Someone who cared enough to offer a little encouragement. It was a small thing, but it meant everything. But even then, Kiana didn't allow herself to get too excited. She had been let down so many times before that it was hard to believe things could really be different. Still, there was something inside her that kept pushing her forward. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new. Little did she know, this message from the Rock would change everything. Kiana sat on her bed staring at the message from the Rock. She had read it over and over again, each time trying to process what she was seeing. It felt surreal. Her fingers hovered over the phone screen, unsure of what to do next. The words were simple but so powerful, like a voice in the dark telling her that maybe she wasn't alone after all. For so long, Kiana had felt like an invisible person in the world. She struggled with the feeling that no one cared, that no one noticed her existence. She'd grown up in a neighborhood where survival was the only thing that mattered. There were no second chances, no handouts, and no guarantees that things would get better. Her mother worked long hours just trying to keep their small apartment from falling apart. Kiana had learned to fend for herself at an early age, and even though she longed for someone to help, she had never known how to ask. But now, sitting in her room, it felt like everything had changed. Here was a person she looked up to, someone who didn't even know her, taking the time to offer words of encouragement. It wasn't just some random comment. It was a message that made her feel seen, like maybe all the struggles she faced were finally being acknowledged. She quickly typed a response, trying to keep her emotions in check. She thanked him for his kind words and told him how much it meant to her. She wasn't sure if he would respond again, but she had to say something. There was a part of her that still couldn't believe this was real. Days passed and the world around Kiana seemed unchanged. She went to school, hung out with her friends, and did what she had always done. But there was a quiet shift inside her. For the first time in a long time, she felt a little lighter, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. The Rock's words had sparked something in her, something she couldn't quite explain. It wasn't just about the message itself. It was about the fact that someone who had everything was still willing to reach out and make a difference in her life. And then, just when she thought the exchange might have been a one-time thing, another notification popped up on her phone. This time, it wasn't just a reply from The Rock, it was from Cena. Kiana had always admired Cena too, not just for his wrestling career but for his work with children and his commitment to positivity. When she saw his name, her heart skipped a beat. The message was brief but full of warmth. He told her he had seen the post and that he was proud of her for speaking up and reaching out. He shared his own experiences of facing adversity and told her that it was okay to ask for help when needed. He also invited her to a special charity event he was hosting, telling her that if she ever needed a change of scenery or some time to think, she was more than welcome to join. He didn't make any grand promises, but his sincerity was enough to make Kiana feel like maybe, just maybe, this was real. The invitation to the event felt overwhelming. Kiana sat with her phone in her hand, staring at the message. She never imagined she would get an offer like this. Her first instinct was to back away, to doubt that this was anything more than a gesture of kindness. But another part of her, the part that had listened to The Rock's words and had seen Cena's support, told her that this might be the moment she had been waiting for. Kiana thought about it for a while. She had never been to anything like this before. She had never had the chance to be a part of something bigger than her world. But the thought of being in a space where people cared, where there was no judgment or expectations, was both terrifying and exciting. She had spent so much time in her small world battling every day just to get by, that the idea of stepping outside of it felt like a leap into the unknown. After some time, Kiana made a decision. She would go. She wasn't sure what would happen or what to expect, but she felt like this might be the chance she had been waiting for. It wasn't just about meeting her idols. It was about taking a step toward something better, something beyond the life she had always known. The next week, Kiana packed her bag, not knowing exactly what to bring or how to prepare. She had never done anything like this before, but with every step she took toward the event, she felt a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness. What if she wasn't enough? What if she didn't belong? The doubts crept in, but she pushed them away. She had to try. When she arrived at the venue, she couldn't believe how big it was. There were people everywhere, smiling faces, laughter, and a sense of community that felt so foreign to Kiana. The event was a charity fundraiser, and it was filled with families, celebrities, and supporters. It wasn't just a meet and greet. It was an experience that connected people in ways she had never imagined. Kiana stood at the entrance for a few moments, taking it all in. She felt a little lost, unsure of where to go or who to talk to. But before she could second-guess herself, a voice called out to her. It was Cena. He had spotted her from across the room and made his way over to her. He greeted her with a warm smile and a handshake, just like he had known her forever. Kiana felt her nerves ease a little, and she managed to smile back, though her heart was racing. Cena made her feel welcome, like she was a part of something important. They talked for a while, and Cena introduced her to a few people who were also there to support the cause. Kiana had never felt so out of place and yet so at home at the same time. She was surrounded by people who genuinely cared, and for the first time, she realized that maybe there was more to life than the narrow world she had been living in. As the night went on, The Rock made his appearance. He walked into the room with his usual presence, charismatic, confident, and full of energy. But when he saw Kiana, he walked straight toward her with a big smile on his face. He didn't treat her like a fan or someone he barely knew. He treated her like a person, someone who mattered. The Rock and Cena spent time talking to her, asking about her life, her dreams, and her struggles. They didn't try to give her quick fixes or easy solutions. They just listened, offering words of encouragement when she needed them most. It was in those moments that Kiana felt something shift inside her. She realized that the strength she had always admired in others was something she had within herself all along. She just needed someone to remind her of it. As the event came to an end, Kiana felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. She had taken a chance, stepped outside her comfort zone, and found that there were people who cared. People who saw her for who she was and believed in her potential. For the first time in a long time, Kiana felt like she had a future. It wasn't perfect, and she still had a long way to go, but she knew that she wasn't alone anymore. The support from The Rock and Cena had given her the strength to believe in herself again. Kiana couldn't stop thinking about the event. The experience had felt like a dream, one she wasn't sure she'd wake up from. But as the days passed, she began to realize that it wasn't a dream. It was real. She had been a part of something bigger than herself, something that had shown her there was more to life than just surviving. When she returned home, everything felt the same. Her small room, the same worn-out walls and the same quiet that filled the space. But inside, she was different. She had met two people who believed in her, who saw her for who she was, and who had taken the time to make her feel valued. That alone was enough to spark something new within her, a determination to change her life. At school, Kiana started to see things differently. For so long, she had felt invisible, like she was just going through the motions, trying not to stand out. But now, after the event, she wanted more. She started speaking up more in class, asking questions, and engaging with her teachers. She had never felt confident enough to do that before, but now it seemed like the right time. It wasn't easy, and she still had moments of self-doubt, but she was trying. She was finally taking control of her own story. Kiana also began spending more time with her friends. They noticed a change in her, a new spark that had been missing before. She wasn't as withdrawn or quiet as she used to be. Instead, she was more open, more willing to talk about her dreams and the things she wanted to achieve. Her friends were supportive, though some of them didn't fully understand the transformation she was going through. But they encouraged her anyway, happy to see her taking the first steps toward something better. It wasn't just her friends who noticed the change. Kiana's mother saw it too. At first, her mom had been worried when Kiana mentioned the event and the messages from The Rock and Cena. She was protective of her daughter, always cautious about things that seemed too good to be true. But when she saw the way Kiana carried herself afterward, with more confidence and a brighter outlook, she began to believe that maybe this was the turning point Kiana needed. One evening, after dinner, Kiana's mom sat down with her. She looked at her daughter, her face filled with concern but also with a sense of pride. "You've been different since you got back," she said softly. Kiana smiled, a little nervous but proud of the changes she had made. "I feel different," she admitted. "I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like I can do more than I thought I could." Her mom nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "I've always believed in you," she said. "But sometimes you just need a little reminder from someone else." "I'm glad you found that." Kiana's heart swelled with emotion. She had always known her mom believed in her, but hearing it out loud made it feel even more real. It was the kind of support Kiana had needed for so long. She wasn't just doing this for herself anymore. She was doing it for her mom, for all the sacrifices she had made to give her a better life. As the weeks went by, Kiana kept in touch with both The Rock and Cena. The messages weren't as frequent as they had been after the event, but they were still there, offering words of encouragement when she needed them most. Kiana was starting to see the impact their support had on her life. It wasn't just that they had helped her get to the event, it was that they had reminded her of her own worth, something she had lost sight of in the struggle to survive. One afternoon, Kiana received another message from The Rock. It wasn't just a simple "hope you're doing well" type of message. This time it was a little more personal. He told her that he had been following her progress and he could see the changes she had made. He even mentioned that he was planning to visit the city soon for an event, and he wanted to meet up with her again. Kiana's heart skipped a beat. This was more than she had ever expected. The thought of meeting him again was exciting, but it also made her nervous. What would she say? Would she be able to live up to the hope he had shown in her? She spent the next few days thinking about what she would say when she met him again. It wasn't just about meeting someone she had admired for so long. It was about showing him that his belief in her wasn't misplaced. She wanted to prove to him and to herself that she was ready to take the next step in her life. When the day of the meeting arrived, Kiana was a bundle of nerves. She had never been good at meeting new people, especially people she looked up to. But this time it was different. This time she had something to prove, not just to The Rock, but to herself. When she saw him walk into the room, a familiar warmth filled her chest. The Rock greeted her with the same smile that had made her feel so welcome at the event. He didn't treat her like a fan. He treated her like a friend, and that made all the difference. They sat down together and Kiana found herself talking more openly than she had ever expected. She told him about the changes she had been making, the ways she had started to believe in herself again. The Rock listened intently, nodding along as she spoke, offering a few words of encouragement when she needed them. "I always knew you had it in you," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "It's just about taking those first steps. You've done that, and now you just need to keep going. Don't stop believing in yourself." Kiana smiled, feeling the weight of his words settle in her heart. It was one thing to hear it from someone else, but it was another thing entirely to hear it from someone who had been where she was, someone who had faced their own struggles and come out stronger on the other side. As the meeting came to a close, The Rock gave Kiana a hug. "I'm proud of you," he said. "Keep pushing forward. The world needs more people like you." Kiana left that meeting feeling like a different person. She had met her idol, yes, but more importantly, she had met a version of herself that she had almost forgotten existed. The person who could overcome anything, who could reach her dreams no matter how impossible they seemed. As she walked out of the venue, Kiana felt the weight of the world lift off her shoulders. She was ready to take on whatever came next, ready to fight for the life she deserved, and most importantly, ready to believe that she could do it. Kiana woke up early the next morning, the bright sunlight streaming through the window, but her mind was still heavy with thoughts. Meeting The Rock had been a life-changing experience, one that had filled her with both excitement and uncertainty. She felt proud of herself for getting through it, but there was also a voice in her head that reminded her that the journey wasn't over. There was still so much to do, so much she needed to change in her life. It had been a few weeks since that meeting, and things in Kiana's life were slowly starting to shift. She had become more focused on her studies, pushing herself harder than she ever had before. School had never been her favorite place. It felt like a constant reminder of her limitations, the boundaries that her circumstances had set for her. But now she saw things differently. She had started to see education as a tool, a way out of the world she had known for so long. Every time she studied, every page she turned, she felt like she was taking a step closer to the future she had always dreamed about. Her teachers noticed the change in her as well. They were used to Kiana's quiet presence in class, but now she was raising her hand more often, asking questions and offering ideas. She wasn't afraid to speak up anymore, and it surprised them. It wasn't just the academic improvements that stood out. It was the way she carried herself. There was a quiet confidence in her that hadn't been there before. Kiana felt it too. She felt stronger, more capable, more determined, but not everything was easy. There were days when the doubt would creep back in, when she would wonder if she was fooling herself, thinking she could really change her life. It wasn't like the old world she had known was gone. It was still there, just beyond the surface, waiting for her to slip back into it. The people she had grown up with were still struggling, and she saw them every day. Sometimes the pull to return to what was familiar, what was comfortable, was strong. One afternoon, she ran into an old friend from her neighborhood. His name was Darren, and he had been one of the first people Kiana had ever trusted. They had spent years growing up together, sharing everything from dreams to fears. But over time, Darren had become someone Kiana distanced herself from. He had started making decisions that didn't match the dreams they used to talk about, decisions that seemed to be pulling him further and further away from the kind of life Kiana wanted for herself. "Hey, Kiana, what's up?" Darren called out to her, his voice carrying a mix of surprise and casualness. Kiana turned around, her heart skipping a beat. She hadn't seen him in months. He had changed. His clothes were different, more flashy, and his attitude seemed more hardened. "Hey, Darren," she replied, forcing a smile. They exchanged small talk for a few minutes, and then Darren asked, "You still hanging around with all those people at school? I thought you were going to be different, bigger than that." Kiana felt a pang in her chest, but she didn't let it show. She knew exactly what he meant. Darren had always been skeptical of her dreams, telling her that people like them didn't get to make it out, that the world had already decided their future for them. But meeting Cena had opened her eyes. She didn't have to settle for the path that was laid out for her. She didn't have to accept the limitations others had placed on her. "I am different," Kiana said quietly but firmly. "I'm working on something bigger than that." Darren didn't seem convinced. He shrugged, a half-hearted smile on his face. "Well, good luck with that, I guess. Just don't forget where you came from." Kiana stood there watching as Darren walked away, a lump in her throat. Part of her wanted to chase after him, to tell him everything that had happened, to tell him how things could be different. But another part of her knew that some people wouldn't understand, no matter how much you tried to explain. She couldn't change their minds. All she could do was keep moving forward. The conversation with Darren stayed with her for the rest of the day. It wasn't just his words that bothered her. It was the realization that not everyone would support her. Some people, like Darren, would stay stuck in the old ways, unwilling or unable to see the possibilities beyond their current lives. It was hard to let go of people you had once been close to. But Kiana knew she had to. She couldn't afford to look back now. In the weeks that followed, Kiana continued to focus on herself. She spent more time at the library, reading books and working on her assignments. She even started attending a local community center after school, where she volunteered and helped with programs for younger kids. It wasn't easy balancing everything, her schoolwork, her volunteering, and her personal growth, but it felt right. She knew that each step she took, no matter how small, was bringing her closer to the life she wanted. One evening, after a long day of studying, Kiana sat at her desk, feeling the familiar exhaustion settle in. She had come so far in such a short time, but there were still days when it felt like too much. She closed her eyes, her mind wandering back to that first message from the rock. He had told her she wasn't alone. And for the first time in a long time, she truly believed that. She wasn't alone anymore. There were people out there who cared, who had helped her see her own worth, and who had shown her that change was possible. Kiana pulled out her phone and sent a quick message to the rock. It wasn't long or particularly profound, just a simple note to let him know how much his words had meant to her. She had been holding on to his message for weeks like a lifeline, and now she wanted to let him know how much it had impacted her. She hit send and waited, unsure if he would respond. It didn't matter, she told herself. She had already taken the step toward change. But when the notification popped up, her heart raced. It was a message from The Rock. He had responded. His message was short, but it was exactly what Kiana needed to hear. "I'm proud of you, Kiana. Keep doing what you're doing. You're on the right path." Her hands trembled as she read the message. It was simple, but it was everything. It reminded her that she wasn't alone. She was still growing, still learning, still moving toward something greater than she had ever imagined. With newfound determination, Kiana took a deep breath and closed her eyes for a moment. She wasn't just a girl from a rough neighborhood anymore. She was someone who had the strength to create her own future. She had people who believed in her, and she had started believing in herself. No matter how difficult it got, she knew she had what it took to push through. She wasn't going to stop now. The next day, Kiana stood in front of her class, ready to give a presentation. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she wasn't afraid. She was ready. The girl who had once felt invisible, who had been too scared to speak up, was now standing tall, confident in her voice. And as she spoke, she realized something important. She wasn't just doing this for herself anymore. She was doing this for everyone who had ever felt like they couldn't make it out. She was doing it to show them that anything was possible. Kiana woke up to the sound of her alarm blaring, a feeling of excitement bubbling inside her. Today was different. Today was the day she had been working toward for so long. It had been months since she first sent that message to The Rock, and her life had changed in ways she never thought possible. She had faced obstacles, dealt with doubts, and had moments when she wondered if the path she was on would really lead to anything. But through it all, she had kept going. Today, she was finally going to see the result of all her hard work. The scholarship she had applied for months ago, the one she had almost given up on, had come through. She had been accepted into a college program. It wasn't just any college, it was the kind of school that had always seemed out of reach. The kind of place where she could learn, grow, and start to build the future she had dreamed about for so long. As Kiana looked at her phone, she couldn't help but smile. The message from The Rock that she had received months ago still stood out in her mind. "Keep doing what you're doing. You're on the right path." Those words had stuck with her even on the days when things felt impossible. They had become her reminder that no matter how tough things got, she could keep moving forward. Kiana stood up, feeling the weight of the moment. It wasn't just the scholarship that felt like a win. It was everything she had learned along the way. The strength she had gained, the confidence she now carried with her, and the realization that her dreams were no longer too big to reach. She had come so far, but she knew the journey was just beginning. Over the last few months, her life had been full of new experiences. She had joined clubs, made new friends, and found ways to balance school, work, and her personal growth. It wasn't easy, and there were still days when she felt overwhelmed, but she had learned to keep pushing forward, even when it seemed like the world was against her. She had learned that every setback, every failure was just a lesson in disguise. Each step backward was simply a chance to get stronger and keep going. The support from The Rock and Cena had meant more than Kiana could ever put into words. They had given her the belief that she could achieve something greater than what she had been taught to expect. When she first received those messages, she had felt like she was asking for too much, like someone like her didn't deserve to be heard. But now, as she looked at her acceptance letter, she realized just how wrong she had been. She had always been worthy of the opportunities she had fought for. She had just needed a reminder. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from one of her friends from the community center. They were planning a get-together to celebrate her acceptance into college, and Kiana felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She had made friends who believed in her, who celebrated her victories as their own. They had been with her through every step of the journey, supporting her when things got tough and lifting her up when she needed it most. Kiana quickly replied to the message, agreeing to meet up later that evening. She was excited to see her friends, to celebrate how far she had come. But more than that, she was looking forward to sharing her journey with them, to showing them that it was possible to break free from the limitations they had been taught to accept. They had all faced their own struggles, and now, Kiana felt ready to show them that they, too, could overcome whatever challenges lay ahead. As she prepared for the get-together, Kiana couldn't help but think about her mom. the woman who had worked tirelessly to provide for her, who had always believed in her even when Kiana had doubts about herself. Her mom had been her rock, the one constant in a world that had often felt uncertain. And now Kiana had the chance to make her proud in a way that went beyond anything she could have imagined. She wasn't just succeeding for herself, she was succeeding for her mom, for everything she had done to give her a better life. When the time came,
Kiana joined her friends at the local cafe.
a place they often went to after community events. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was where they gathered to share their stories, laugh, and support each other. Tonight, however, there was something different in the air. Everyone seemed to be buzzing with excitement, and Kiana could tell they were all eager to celebrate her achievement. "Congrats, Kiana," one of her friends, Lily, said as soon as Kiana walked in. "We knew you could do it." Kiana felt a wave of warmth rush through her. She hadn't expected such a big reaction, but it made her heart swell with appreciation. She was surrounded by people who genuinely cared for her, who had been there through the ups and downs. These weren't just casual friends, they were the people who had become her second family. "Thanks, Lily," Kiana said, her voice a little shaky with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without all of you. You've all been with me through this whole journey, and I'm so grateful for that." The group gathered around her, each person offering congratulations and words of encouragement. They had all seen how hard Kiana had worked, how much effort she had put into turning her life around. For them, it wasn't just about the scholarship. It was about everything that Kiana had overcome to get to this point. As the evening wore on, Kiana found herself reflecting on how far she had come. She had started out as a girl who didn't think she could make it out of her circumstances. She had felt stuck, trapped in a life that seemed like it had no way out. But now she was looking at a future that was filled with possibilities. She had a plan, a purpose, and the support of people who believed in her. She had the strength to overcome anything life threw at her. After the get-together, Kiana walked home, the cool evening air refreshing her thoughts. She passed by her old neighborhood, the place she had spent most of her life. It didn't look much different, but to Kiana, it felt like a world away. She had changed. The people around her had changed, and the future that once seemed so far out of reach was now right in front of her. When she got home, her mom was sitting on the couch waiting for her. Kiana smiled and sat down beside her. They didn't need to say much. They just sat there quietly enjoying the moment, knowing that things were different now. Kiana had done it. She had made it through the toughest parts of her life, and now she was ready to face whatever came next. And with the love and support of her mom, and the lessons she had learned from the people who believed in her, she knew she could handle anything that lay ahead. Her mom gave her a proud look and said, "I knew you could do it. I'm so proud of you, Kiana." Kiana's heart swelled with love and gratitude. "Thanks, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you." And in that moment, Kiana realized that the journey was never just about reaching a destination. It was about the people you met along the way, the lessons you learned, and the strength you found within yourself when you thought you had nothing left. She had come so far, and she knew this was only the beginning.